Kyle Larson enters the summer of 2026, carrying a label that doesn't match the facts on the ground. With headlines suggesting he's facing suspension or some career-ending scandal, the numbers and the reports from the garage tell a completely different story, one rooted in inspection penalties rather than any ban from racing. Larson came into this season as the man to beat, having just claimed his second Cup Series championship. The previous year by finishing third in the Phoenix finale, a result that secured the title under NASCAR's format. We're simply out-racing the other three championship contenders on that single Sunday is enough to win it all. That outcome set expectations sky high for 2026, with most of the garage assuming Larson and the number 5 Hendrick Motorsports team would pick up right where they left off. The season opener at the Daytona 500 didn't deliver. That continuation with Larson crossing the line in 16th place, a finish that wasn't catastrophic, but fell well short of a champion's typical season opening result. The following week at Atlanta Motor Speedway, his car was caught up in an on-track incident that ended any shot at a strong finish, dropping him well outside contention for that race. 2 events into the year, Larson sat 21st in the championship standings, a position that triggered widespread questions about whether the sport's reigning champion was already in trouble. That Atlanta weekend brought a second issue, entirely separate from the wreck itself. Before the race had even started, NASCAR officials ran the number 5 Chevrolet through pre-qualifying inspection, and the car failed the process twice, before finally passing on the third attempt. Under NASCAR's current penalty structure, a single failed inspection carries no real consequence, since teams are simply told to fix the issue and proceed. Failing twice or more, however, activates an automatic penalty. And because Larson's team needed 3 attempts to get the car legal, they lost the ability to select their own pit stall for the race, a disadvantage that can cost multiple seconds per pit stop across a 400-mile event. The more significant consequence was personal. NASCAR ejected car chief Jesse Saunders from the remainder of the race weekend, removing the person responsible for fine-tuning the car setup between practice and qualifying sessions. That penalty did not turn out to be an isolated incident. Weeks later at Bristol Motor Speedway, for the Food City 500, inspection problems resurfaced. On a larger scale with 5 different Cup Series entries, failing inspection multiple times before the race, Larson's car included among them. All 5 teams received the identical penalty: loss of pit selection and the ejection of a crew member. For the remainder of the weekend, for Larson specifically, the situation carried added weight because he was now appearing in penalty reports for the second time in a matter of weeks as the sport's reigning champion, a pattern that prompted conversations inside the garage about whether Hendrick Motorsports was pushing too aggressively on setup limits, or whether the current car simply made staying within tolerance more difficult across the board. The pattern continued into June 2026, when the Cup Series arrived at Pocono Raceway for the Great American Getaway 400, a track known as the Tricky Triangle because its 3 mismatched corners force every team into setup compromises that increase the risk of inspection issues. Once again, Larson's car failed inspection twice before passing on the 3rd try, triggering the same penalty structure as before, with the team losing pit selection and Jesse Saunders. He pulled from the rest of the weekend. That ejection marked the 3rd time. The same car chief had been removed from a race weekend during the 2026 season alone, and the pattern grew more notable when a second team on that same day was hit with the identical penalty for the same reason. What happened next is the part of the story that runs directly against the suspension narrative. Despite losing his car chief for the 3rd time that season, Larson went out in practice at Pocono and posted the fastest lap of the entire session, beating veteran driver Denny Hamlin by a clear margin. Then followed the performance by qualifying 2nd and starting from the front row for the race. The penalties had clearly affected his team's pit strategy and personnel availability, but they had done nothing to slow down his actual speed on the track. The suspension claims circulating online do not hold up against any of the documented record. Larson himself has not been suspended at any point during the 2026 season, and every penalty issued against his team has targeted personnel decisions and pit selection, rather than his ability to compete. There is no public statement or interview on record showing him losing composure over any of the inspection issues and acknowledging frustration over a difficult start. To defending a championship is an entirely different matter from facing a suspension or a public breakdown. What the record actually shows is that a 2-time champion has drawn inspection penalties at 3 separate races, in a single season, each one resulting in the ejection of the same crew member, a repetition that typically points toward an unresolved setup or compliance issue inside the team, rather than any disciplinary action against the driver. Through every one of those setbacks, Larson kept climbing in the standings rather than falling further behind. After sitting 21st in points early in the season, he fought his way back into the top 6 of the championship standings. A recovery that stands as arguably the more significant storyline here, with a champion absorbing multiple penalties and still maintaining position inside title contention, rather than fading from view. The schedule ahead raises the stakes considerably further. On June 21st, NASCAR will send the Cup Series to a brand new street course near Coronado for the San Diego 250, marking the first time a Cup car has ever competed on these streets. That lack of any historical data means every driver enters the event with an identical blank slate, a scenario that tends to favor a versatile competitor with experience across multiple disciplines, which describes Larson's background in sprint cars, dirt racing, and road courses. Following that event, June 28th brings the in-season challenge at Sonoma Raceway, a single elimination bracket built from the top 32 drivers in the point standings, with the eventual winner receiving $1 million in cash. The bracket narrows to 16 drivers after Sonoma, then to 8 following the Chicago street race, then 4 after Atlanta, and 2 after North Wilkesboro, before the 2 remaining finalists meet in a winner-take-all race. At the Brickyard 400 in Indianapolis on July 26th, Larson enters the bracket as the 6th seed, drawing a first-round matchup against 27th seeded Riley Herbst, a pairing that should favor the 2-time champion on paper, though the single elimination format means one difficult pit stop or another inspection issue could end his run in the very first round. Outside the bracket, the standard championship race continues to unfold alongside it. Larson currently sits 6th in the point standings with 462 points, trailing leader Tyler Reddick by 207 points, with Reddick having held the points lead through every single race run so far this season. That gap, paired with everything Larson's team has had to work through across Atlanta, Bristol, and Pocono, forms the real substance behind a season that has generated far more noise online than the actual results would suggest. The broader picture that emerges from these 3 races is one of a defending champion navigating real mechanical and compliance challenges rather than any personal controversy. Each inspection failure has been documented. Each penalty has been applied according to NASCAR's existing rulebook, and each consequence has fallen on the team's pit strategy and personnel rather than on Larson's right to compete. The fastest lap at Pocono, the front row start, and the climb from 21st back into the top 6 all point toward a driver whose on-track performance has remained largely unaffected by what's been happening in the inspection line, even as questions persist about what exactly is causing Hendrick Motorsports to repeatedly run into the same compliance issues. If you want every NASCAR storyline broken down with this level of detail the moment it happens, hit that like button and subscribe to NASCAR Report USA so you never miss the next.